Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be starting episode 4 in our series, the Catacombs, where we do deep dives into specific edits and D2R tutorials. In today's topic, we're going to be covering creating new level warps and connecting custom levels and all that kind of stuff. So with that said, if you guys are enjoying the content, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. You know the drill by now. Let's roll right into it. Number one, as always, we're going to grab our text files that we'll be editing today, and I've kind of prepared all the folders that we'll be using, so speed this up just a little bit. So the first things we'll be grabbing are levels.txt to add our new levels, level maze.txt because we're going to be creating some new randomly generated levels, level press.txt because we'll be create a new preset level that kind of the layout's always the same on it. And then finally, we're going to grab level warp.txt because we are going to create a new warp type to carry between our custom level and town. So we'll be editing Act 5 town in order to put a warp in a place that doesn't normally have a warp spot, and that's going to connect us to our new levels from there. So because we're editing Act 1 town, the last file we'll grab is going to be data, global, tiles, expansion, town, and we're going to grab town west. So let me just go here, and we'll delete that, and here we go. We'll drag it in. So those are the 5 files we need as far as getting everything edited and stuff go. There's going to be one more quick JSON we'll copy at the very end of the video just to show you, you know, one of the new kind of resurrected things. But we're all set to get ready and start editing. So now that we're ready to edit, we're going to want to pull up the website and download Win DS1Edit. The package from the website, the complete version, will include everything you need, as well as map files and things to get you started, although you can obviously just grab all that from Cask. So we have grabbed, this is the actual legacy map file, this .ds1. So all I'm going to do now is open up the loader, the DS1 loader included in that download, and then we can go ahead and open up this map and get editing. So I already have it pointing to this location, but obviously just point to your kind of map location and get that opened up. And then once it's kind of loaded in here, we can select run, and it's going to start the actual editor. And once that's loaded in, we're just going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit using the mouse wheel, and we want to select this building here. And what we want to do just for fun is we're going to have this door take us to a custom level. So it's just kind of an unused area in town. Thought it might be neat and also show off some of the customization that you have in this. So the number one thing I will say is that F5 through F8 are going to be your wall keys. There are 4 walls that you're going to kind of want to just know. So if I press F5, for example, if we look up here, W1 through 4, if I press F5, you can see that W1 disappears as well as some of the elements in the map. So this whole structure and this gate and everything is part of wall 1. And that's why when I push F5, it disappears. If I push F6, we hide everything on wall 2, and you can see our building disappears. And the reason that's important is because when I left click to kind of select this and highlight it blue, and now I right click to go to my tile placement section. I do not want to place anything on wall 2 for this section because the building is already using wall 2. So just as a quick example, we want to go to a special tile and select a Viz 0 of type 11, and you can see as soon as I click that, that whole building is gone here on the left hand side. It's going to be replaced by this single floor tile. That's not what we want. We want to kind of keep this. So we're going to right click and we're just going to leave it on wall 1 because it's not being used by this particular kind of tile section. And now we can go to specials. We want to select Viz 0 of type 11. You can see it's type 11 by this orange numbering here. This would be a type 10. And the reason they're just kind of different is left and right directions as you come out of warps and stuff. So for this particular example, where we're going to be coming from the right side of the screen to the left side of the screen, we want to grab a left type orientation tile, which is going to be this type 11 here. So anyways, we've selected that. We're going to hit OK, and this is the only change we need to make for this particular edit. So we've now told the map and therefore the game itself that this particular tile is allowed to connect to a map. It's a warp spot. So we're happy with that. We're going to go ahead and save it and quit. And here's our edited file. Here's our backup file. If you made a mistake or something, you can just go ahead and rename that and get back to work. So we're all done with the map. Now we can begin with the text editing. So to start there, we'll go Global Excel. We'll go ahead and start with levels.txt. And again, we're going to be using town as our kind of warp entry. So that's where we're going to be starting in Act 5. But just to show that you're not limited to like kind of Act 5 type things, we're going to go ahead and copy everything from the Forgotten Tower entrance to the end of Forgotten Tower level 5. So I'm just going to copy all 6 rows there, and then we're going to go ahead and paste those at the bottom. You can also use the clone option. That's just have it for me. And then all we really want to do, we'll go ahead and update the names just for, just make it easy to see basically that, these are all new. You don't necessarily need to do this, just, put in whatever you want. And then we want to update the level IDs. So these are the actual kind of references that a lot of the things we'll use to pull up the level. We just want to select the last kind of good ID all the way to the bottom. Then we can select fill, increment fill, and it's going to autofill all those IDs in for us. And then you cannot travel or you cannot warp between acts when you're doing your warp. So because we're going to be starting in Act 5, by the way, this Act column starts at 0, so Act 1 is Act 0 as far as this column is concerned. So anyways, because we're starting in Act 5, we need to change these new levels to also be Act 5 as far as the game is concerned, so that we don't get any crashes for traveling between acts. So we're just going to update all these to 4 to signify that it's Act 5. Again, it starts at 0, so that's why the discrepancy there. And then what we want to do is we're going to start changing our vises and warps. So I'm just going to run back to that file we just edited. I should have left that open just to make it clear here. But if you remember, we added a viz0. So that's what we're trying to add to our kind of entrance location, which again is going to be the kind of Forgotten Tower entrance. And you'll notice that in this viz0 column, it has a value of 6. That indicates, if we scroll all the way up and we go to level ID 6, that indicates that it connects to Wilderness 5, which, as most of you know, is Black Marsh. However, we don't want it connecting to Black Marsh anymore. We want it connecting to our Act 5 town. So what we're going to do is just look for Act 5 town, see that it's ID 109, and we're going to replace that 6 with 109. So now it no longer will go back to the Black Marsh. It's going to go to our town. And because it's going to our town, let's go ahead and get that out of the way. So let me actually just lock these columns, make it easier. We're going to change town for that viz0 again. This is the tile we edited and placed. We're going to set it to go to our new Forgotten Tower, which is ID 137. So we're just going to go back up here, type in 137 as the level location to go to. And now we're going to add a new warp type. So as you might imagine, there isn't normally a warp in the kind of middle of town that comes out of a doorway like this. It's a new warp location, if you will. And while you can reuse them if they're like similar enough as far as direction and mouse position and all that stuff goes, we're going to create a new one so we can make it match the best we can and show you how this works in Resurrected. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and drag our level warp.txt in so we can start editing that. This will be a pretty easy edit, but I am going to reference an old guide here from the creator of DS1Editor. Definitely a good guide. I strongly recommend reading all his content, but it's going to kind of explain all the details and why we're doing some of these things. So real quickly, what I was doing there was just updating the IDs. So this is the ID of the actual warp that we want to use. And then this is a unique ID that every warp entry just needs its own ID. You'll see some of these here. They might have the same warp ID of 82, but they still have separate unique IDs, and that's because some warps are only good for left or right as far as coming in or out of that warp. However, we're going to create a B, stands for both. We're going to create an orientation that allows it for either way. But let's just call this Act 5 hidden, because it's normally kind of hidden. You wouldn't see this, normally in the game. And I am just going to basically copy these settings here. So again, this is from an old guide from Paul Cerami, the creator of this Win DS1Edit tool. So I definitely recommend checking out the source there and grabbing all the info. But we're just going to copy all this for our new edit here. So that's going to be -20, -111, 46, 112, 0, 5, 2, 1. In the guide, it says to never use the lit version. In Legacy, you had to edit, have a custom DLL or do some code editing to have the entrance light up when you mouse over it, but in Resurrected, that's not the case. So we're going to go ahead and set 1 for the lit version. We are going to give it 2 tiles, and we can go ahead and leave the no interact to 0 because we do want to interact with it. As I briefly mentioned before, we're going to set it to B for both orientations, and then we've already kind of give it our ID. So this is our new warp. Again, we've kind of customized this. I would recommend reading the guide, both from Paul Cerami as well as the Blizzard data guide, as it will explain what each of those columns I just edited did. But the quick TLDR of it is that it's for mouse positions where your character comes out of the warp as far as the specific subtile and stuff goes. You can define all that here. So that's all we did is essentially just define the size and where everything is located for that warp. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And again, our ID is 83. So now that we've created the new warp, we can put that in warp 0 to match up with our viz 0. And now it's going to take us to level 137 using this new warp that we've created. And now we just need to update everything else to match. So we already started editing it. So again, now this tower entrance will go back to town. But now we want the lower levels, the Viz 1, we want it to continue to our next level of the tower, the old cellar level 1. Again, is ID 138 for us now. So we are just going to go down the list and fill those in. So 138 now can take you to 139, etc., all the way until we get to the last filled in one. And these are going to be the locations for that. If we go to our next one here, again, our level 1 cellar is now no longer, instead of taking us to 20, which was the old tower entrance, it's taking us to the new tower entrance, which is 137. So we're just, once again, going to fill in all these values to, match. So this is the kind of completed viz section. So now we've cloned kind of all these level definitions. We've told them how to link to each other with all the new entries. And for these, we don't need to change any of the warp columns because we're not changing the warp type. We didn't, change where to click or anything like that. And they're still kind of connecting the same. We're just going to leave all those warp types. So we've now done all the level changes that we want for our edit. So just a quick recap to make sense. We've connected our Act 5 town to our new tower entrance, which is 137, and it's going to be using our brand new warp type of 83 so that we can get that, the mouse position and stuff just how we want. And then once it connects to the new tower level, they have the opportunity to go back up to town, which is again ID 109, or they can keep going down the levels further and further, or once they get to level 1, they can start going back up and stuff. So you guys can see how the levels break down. We're all set there, and we only got 2 files left, and I promise the pain's almost over. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to grab our level press.text and drag that in. So our first preset level is this tower level. So again, if you remember, this is just like a, I don't know, 20 by 20 square or something, basically like a loading level. So it never changes, and therefore this is considered a preset level. Preset levels in Diablo 2 Resurrected are a little bit important because they expect JSON files. So for every single preset level, I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick. If we go to Data, HD, ENV for environment, and then preset, you'll see that same folder structure we have in our tiles folder. So it's that same kind of folder structure. And again, this is supposed to match every preset folder or every preset map file to a JSON counterpart. So in our case, if we were adding like a brand new town or something, and we, this modified map file that we're using also had some like visual changes, maybe a couple walls or buildings were moved around or something like that, we would expect there to be a JSON file to reflect all that. So what this means is if you've done all those edits, you go into the game and you have not made those changes in this JSON file, it's still going to look in resurrected mode just as it did before, but you're going to have all the collision and everything from the map file still interfering. So an example might be you put up a wall somewhere in the map file. In Resurrected, you're not going to see that wall at all, but your character is still going to run into it. Now, as you can see from this JSON I just opened up, the Act 5 town is currently 160,000 lines of code, and there is not really a good programmer or anything to use to edit this. So although it is very simple in theory, you're just copy and pasting different elements between the brackets. So here, for example, there's some crate models, for just adding scenery and stuff to the level, and then the pixel positions and stuff on where to place them and all that fun stuff. It's theoretically as easy as just copy and pasting, changing the position some, and there you go. You've duplicated some crates, and now they're somewhere else. But as you can imagine, doing this for 160,000 lines of code manually, with kind of no visual representation, but constantly going in and out of the map to test things, is basically a nightmare. So as far as creating brand new custom levels, it's technically possible, but not strictly feasible. We're just going to have to wait till a better program comes out. On the other side of the coin, we're going to have maze levels, which are randomly generated and don't use map files at all. So D2R handles that, and therefore it will draw all the resurrected graphics for you, and you basically don't need to worry about it. So now that with that little side tangent out of the way, again, we had just opened up level press.text because we need to create a new preset level. And so that preset level, once more, is just Act 1 Tower. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down until we find that. And we passed it somewhere. There we go. So we're just going to go ahead and clone this. Again, you can copy and paste, or you can use the clone function. We're just going to go ahead and scroll to the bottom. Should see it there. So we'll add our new just for our own help. And then we're going to define a new ID, so just the next one in the list for this file. And then this is the level that this preset is kind of attached to. So again, this is our Forgotten Tower entrance, which is ID 137. So we're going to go ahead and fill that in. And we don't need to change anything else in this. But as I kind of touched on before, if you are creating your own kind of custom map version and you got some of your own edits, your own map file, then you might want to change this to something like Tower 3 or, just whatever your custom map is that you're trying to keep separate from the original, and make your JSON and everything to match that. But we're not going to change the rest in here. You can read the data guide for what some of the different fields here do. We're all set for the preset level, and now we're just going to finally just copy our maze level, sorry. So we'll bring in our maze, and again, for our maze levels, it's using crypt3 and crypt3A to crypt3E, so those are the ones we're going to copy, and those are right here, so we can just highlight those, copy and paste, we'll go to the bottom and paste those in. And once more, we're just basically updating the IDs. So I'm going to go ahead and do my usual renaming here just to make things easy for later. And then we're going to update all these IDs. So again, it's going to start after the tower entrance, which is going to be 138, and it's going to continue from there sequentially. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the rest here. And so it should start at 138, end at 142, and that's exactly what we see, so perfect. So everything's all matching here. Obviously, if you want to change room sizes and how many there are and all that kind of stuff, have fun. But we're just doing simple edits for now just to show how everything works. So we've edited all of our text files, and we've edited our DS1 file. So if we start the game now, everything should work correctly. Everything's connected. So just a quick recap, we've gone back and we've changed all the vizzes to match, and they now connect to our edited viz 0 on town, and so everything is basically good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start it, but you will notice something is just a little off when we go to use the actual warp. And then I'll show you how to fix that, because it's just something a little bit new to Resurrected that you likely don't know yet. So let's go ahead and stop talking and get in game. Oh, and I actually do think I forgot one step on you here. We'll find out in a minute. I did. So you'll notice that we did all the edits and we have the map file, but there's nothing here on this kind of section we edited. And that's because I did forget a step on you. So let's rewind. We're going to go ahead and go back. And if we go into our global tiles section where we have our edited map folder, I'm going to delete that just because we're not using it. And if we go into our kind of town section here, we do have our edited map. However, in Diablo 2 Resurrected, we have a folder. If we go to we go to Data, Global, Tiles, and we go into like our expansion folder, for example, we're going to see a file here, combined_ds1.bin. This is some sort of backup for all the map files in Legacy. So as long as this file is kind of present, the game will ignore any changes you made to the map and kind of pull from this backup instead. So all we need to do to get around that is we're going to open up Notepad. We're going to make sure it's completely blank, and then we're going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to come down here to the Save as Type dropdown. We're going to select all files instead, and we are going to save it as combined_ds1.bin. So this way it's still going to read the file because it's technically in our mod files, but because it's zeroed out, when it goes to read that backup, there's no information, and therefore it will read your map file now. So you're going to need to do this for every act that you're editing. So for us, we're only editing Act 5, this kind of expansion folder. So this is the only place we need to put a bin file in. But for example, that Act 1 folder I just deleted, let's say you had a map in Act 1 that you had edited, you would also need to put that bin file in here so that this act is kind of unlocked, if you will, as well. But that's what we were missing there. So I'm going to go ahead and go back in now, and now everything should kind of load our new map, and therefore all of our connections we made in text should be active. So everybody makes mistakes. If it happens to you and you're trying to figure out what's going on, just remember that even the creator is an idiot sometimes. So, all right. So here we go, going back to our kind of new warp location, and now you can see that we have our new entrance. So we can go and click on that. We go into our new tower, and then from here, I've already did some string renaming from a previous video that looks like I forgot to undo, but this would normally just say, Forgotten Tower Settler Level 1, unless you've edited it, to whatever your custom thing is. You can do that in the strings JSON that we've covered in previous videos, and here you go. So just like that, you can kind of create your own levels. Again, this is a maze level, so it'll change depending on their difficulty level or whether they got the command line option for it. And this is a preset level, just a real small loading level that never changes. So we can now go back and forth between them. And I actually forgot to delete a file on you, but you'll notice here that we have this glow. This glow is not something you would normally see unless you've done the edit that I already did and forgot to remove. So if I go to Data, HD, and look inside this Room Tiles folder, we'll see that I have a JSON in here called Act5 Hidden. Anytime you're using a new warp, so again, we created a new warp ID here to get that, where our mouse activates that level entry exactly where we wanted it. Anytime you're using a new warp, that kind of glow effect will not happen unless you have a JSON file to control that. So just to quickly show that here, if I rename that so it's no longer kind of named properly and therefore won't pull up the information, you'll see that when I go back to that warp, it's still going to work. There won't be anything functionally wrong with it, but it's no longer going to light up and look proper. It's just going to display the text. So let's get back in here. And there you go. So you can see it'll still work, it still functions, but now there's no light when you mouse over it. So it just kind of seems like a dead entrance almost. And that is done once again by going into this HD Room Tiles folder, and you need to name it whatever your actual warp name is. So in this case, we named ours Act5 Hidden. There's no spaces, so we just use underscores instead of spaces. And therefore, my JSON file needs to be named act5hidden.json, spelled just like that. And then the game will know how to process that. And just to show you real quick, all that's in here is a custom particle, so you can use whatever you want. But this just tells it to use like a glow particle, and it embeds it to this warp type. So you can embed models, embed particles, whatever you want inside this, but this is how it controls that light effect and when it appears. So once you've done that, you're all set. I'll go ahead and start the game one more time just so you can kind of see everything, one last time. But that's it. We've created our custom levels, both maze and preset. Obviously, you guys can change it how you want. We've created a custom warp type so you can have fun with interacting with it. Again, if you want to stick a warp next to the cow or something and make it so the cow takes you to the cow level or, anything like that, you might have to do some workarounds as far as your vises go to get everything to line up correctly. But you're not really limited in that respect. But there you go, our light's back. So it looks like somebody's home again. And everything's working proper. So I hope this has been an interesting video for you, that you've learned some stuff on how you can customize things further. Thanks for sticking around, and take care. Bye.